Hey guys, this is B Word here at the Bleach Brothers podcast. Just a friendly reminder that we are sponsored by Jerky Pro, and if you are a fan of jerky, make sure to go to www.jerky.pro. Use code BleachBros5 at checkout to get yourself a little bit of a discount. Both Jake and I are huge fans of jerky, and Jake working in the beef industry and me being just a fellow fat kid, we absolutely swear by Jerky Pro. You will not miss out by ordering Jerky Pro. Do not let some of the sticker shock you. There are free shipping options, multiple flavors, etc., so forth. If you do order Jerky Pro, make sure to use code BleachBros5 at checkout.
This is J. Rob of the Cover Zero podcast. Welcome to the Bleach Brothers Top 50 Movies of All Time. In this episode, the guys rank their top films from 20 to 11. Now, let's introduce your hosts, B Word and Jake the Hater.
Welcome into the Bleach Brothers podcast. This is B Word, and as usual, I am here with my good buddy Jake. We're back at our top 50, bro. And we've already counted down 30 movies. And I have to be honest, in our last episode,
we've counted on 29.
30. There's 10 in each block, bro.
50 to 21.
Yeah, you 21, 22, 23. Yeah.
I know, math. I just realized I'm an idiot. Yeah. Sorry. My bad.
So on that note, in the last episode, I allowed something to just kind of be glazed over, and we said we'd get to it. And in this episode, I decided...
Oh, don't talk about glazing. No.
I decided that we're just going to get into the nitty-gritty. Now, we've hinted around this story for a long time, and I want to set this up. So I move away because I got my girlfriend pregnant, and I come back, and we're sitting at a Terrible's casino in Pahrump, Nevada, and we're sitting at a booth. It's you, it's me, it's Bleach Bro Mitch, it's my daughter's mom. There's probably more people there, but that's everybody who was pertinent to the story. And you basically, I hadn't seen you in a few months. Like we were, catching up, doing the things, and you just so happened to come across this story. And in the last episode of our countdown, you were talking about how on your top 50 list is The Land Before Time. And I'm aware that The Land Before Time is, I actually expected it to be higher, to be candid with you, but it's one of your favorite movies of all time. We've already said on the show, anytime you got sick, anytime you weren't feeling well, this was your go-to film. Now, we've told this story to Gnome. That's the only person that I think that we've ever told the story to within the podcast world.
Yes.
And you've been hesitant to share it on the show because sometimes Mama listens.
Right.
So maybe Mama won't listen to this one. But talk to me. Like, how did this story go down? You got to set it up for me.
Well, I came across something which caused this story, and me in ridiculous fashion, not caring where I am, I told this story, and I used to do stand up and tell this story, and now I'm nervous that I'm not going to do it justice. But you know me, like I believe I'm a good storyteller. I mean, that's why we have a show, right? But I was not feeling the best one day. And you remember my house was already a little weird and odd, right? Like we didn't have doorknobs,
Very
like
much
certain
so.
doors.
Yeah.
Like, and so remember my dad put the main TV in their bedroom, like my mom and dad's bedroom. And so like when we were sick, we would usually lay in our parents' bed, like no matter how old we were, so we could actually watch TV or something like that. Well, at the time, my dad had like a makeshift entertainment center in the corner of the room. And so, like, because this was still tube TV days and VCRs, kids. So he had stacked up like old speakers, and then he put a curtain over it. And then he had the TV, and then on top of the tube TV that was a little too big, he had a VCR that was barely sitting on top of it. Because back in the day, you either put it on a unit or you put it on the TV, or you had to set the TV on the VCR. But people would tell you not to do that because it could crush it if you bought a big TV, right? So I wasn't feeling too good, so I was home alone. And I decided I was going to do my normal, make some chicken noodle soup, have an orange Gatorade, get my Ninja Turtle blanket, and I was going to put on Land Before Time and watch this and like curl up and try to make myself feel better. Well, the problem is we never bought movies. We were the head of the piracy people. My mom used to set up a camera sometimes, like a camcorder, next to the TV and zoom in just enough so she would film it that way. So like she was like that person now, like in India with her phone, like filming the the Marvels and releasing
Yeah.
it online. Like that's the level of like quality of movies sometimes we had at our house, right? Well, I go and get this, and my dad would he would always like film or record every Redskin game. So there were two things in the because we also had all our movies in the laundry room. Remember, in that makeshift cabinet, like this is all, and it was gross to go in there, but you had to figure it out. And so you would dig through these tapes. Well, my dad would use old masking tape and write on there. And so like he had all his Redskin movies cataloged and whatever, right? And then there would be a few, but tape falls off over the years. So I was looking and I remember I couldn't find the Land Before Time tape, and I didn't want to dig through all these, but I remembered the case it came in. Because remember, you had like THS brand or this or that brand. And I remember it was a Dolby tape. And I found one. I was like, okay, it's got to be on here, right? So I get this movie, I pop it in, I lay down. I'll say this because I wasn't feeling good. I'm not really clothed, which is pertinent to the story, sort of, but bad. And I put this in, right? And I'm waiting, and it does the scriggly, scratchy lines. And all of a sudden, like something comes on and it pops off. And then all of a sudden, there's just a big bush on the TV of a woman laying on a table. Okay. And I'm intrigued because I'm like I said, I'm not young. I'm not like a child. I'm a teenager, right? I'm in high school during these years.
This is junior year, to be specific.
Junior year high school. So everything's working. And I'm like, well, fuck, there's a bush there. So, okay, like I'm not feeling it. I'll make myself feel better, right? So I start watching it. I'm like, okay, there's a porn. My dad's got a porn. Cool. And then all of a sudden, I'm not going to town or anything because it's pretty brief. And I want to preface this, guys. I was not watching this for hours. There's just a woman laying on the table, spread eagle. There's a giant bush puss in my face. And I'm looking, I'm like, okay, maybe I need to get ready. So I'm waiting there. And then all of a sudden I see this dude saunter in the scene naked. And I notice the saunter and I'm like, oh no. And then all of a sudden the woman's head pops up and it's my mom and it's my dad sauntering by. So I have seen all their genitalia and it's their sex tape. And I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me right now. You gotta be fucking, I just wanted the Land Before Time. I don't feel good. Now I'm watching my parents' sex tape. Okay. Well, the worst part was, B-word, at this point, I'm like freaking out. So I'm trying to dive. And remember, my dad had that giant bed, like that giant bed that was like on stilts, like the one we make you with the one we made Gnome climb in, essentially like that high. So I start diving. Well, my dad's pulling in the driveway as this happens. And I dive to hit eject on the tape. And I hit eject, but I knock the VCR off the TV and it falls behind this giant fucking makeshift fucking audio center that my dad has. And it doesn't stop playing. So I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. And I'm looking out the window and I'm looking at the TV. So I turn off the TV and then I get my dad's back scratcher and I hit the eject button and the tape does. Well, the VCR is facing like if Hulk Hogan was doing a vertical suplex now. It's facing the wrong way. So the tape's trying to eject, but it's doing that thing where it keeps like going.
Keeps sucking it back in.
And it's fucking like my parents were on the tape, on the video. The VCR and this cassette are just fucking each other. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I'm trying to move all this shit. But I'm also trying to watch the door because my dad is gonna walk in the house. I'm in my underwear. I'm in his bed. I'm sitting there with his fucking sex tape in the fucking VCR trying to get this out, okay? So I finally move some shit. I get it. I put the thing back up. Well, I go to pull the tape out. Well, it's fucked itself so hard it's stuck. So I run to the kitchen. And I get 2 butter knives because it's the fastest I can think. And I run back and I jam them in this VCR. Now, at this point, my dad was a big gambler. I look, I see he's doing his parlay tickets, the old school ones. You had to fill the bubbles out. So I'm like, thank God I got some knife. And I'm squeezing this tape and trying to get it out of the VCR because I'm like, I can't die today knowing that my parents' tape, I died because my dad killed me because my parents' sex tape is stuck in the VCR, okay? So I finally pop it out. As I pop it out, my dad comes in the room and goes, what the fuck are you doing? And I just freak out and I go, hey, do you have that 1983 Bears Redskins game? I was really trying to find it. He goes, yeah, it ain't that tape. Let me show you. You didn't watch that, did you? I was like, no. He's like, oh, cool. And he goes and grabs it, puts it in. And then I had to sit through watching the 83 Bears versus fucking Redskin game with him, which also sucked. But to this day, there's only a few people that know that I watched part of my parents' sex tape. So like my brother walked in on my parents, my sister walked in on my parents. I never had that, right? And I would always like everybody like, oh, you're lucky you never did. No, I had it worse. I tried to watch a fucking cartoon dinosaur and make myself feel better. Instead, I got to watch my dad pound my mom's puss. It sucked.
Not only that, the funny part about it is from where your parents' bedroom was, you look out the door and you're right at the dining room and the kitchen. Yeah. And then right past that is the window where your dad pulls up. So like your dad, if he was paying attention, could look through the window and see you in their bed or see you freaking out. And God damn it, dude, I've heard this story, I don't know, 20 or 30 times now. You and I have joked around about this for a long time. Mm-hmm. But God bless it. We finally aired it on the episode. And for those of you questioning the integrity of this story, I can tell you the story has never changed. It is a real story. It has been confirmed by Jake's brother. I've never asked Jake's mom about it because I don't know that she knows to this point. So, Mama, if you're listening, sorry. And with that, Jake, you want to get into our countdown?
No, I want to take a break. I need a minute because I even said from day one I would never tell this story. And it's not that I'm totally ashamed of it. Like I said, I used to do stand-up jokes and stuff. I knew I was never going to make it that big. But B-word, that day sucked. Yeah. That day absolutely sucks. So let's get paid for some ads. I want to feel like a hooker now. I want to get paid for something, and we'll be right back.
Hey everyone, it's Gnome, your favorite metal-loving midget. Do you love music? How about heavy music with some nice gutter rolls and amazing breakdowns? Look no further. Come join Jake the Hater and myself for your bi-weekly heavy music content. We bring you our newest singles and album recommendations. We are also bringing you new artists you may have never heard before. We are now streaming with a new RSS feed on Spreaker Prime. Come subscribe, like, and review. Also check out our Linktree for all our socials, feeds, and of course our very own Spotify playlist. Horns up and stay heavy.
Welcome back into the Bleach Bros podcast. Thank you if you are still with us listening to the horrific story of the land before my time with my parents because it had to be weird that I will say one more point on that movie because it doesn't make my top 50 list. I swear I've never let you watch it because I hope it doesn't make yours. But I know it was before my time because the year and well. Yeah.
Did it have anything to do with
yes,
the sideburns on your dad's dick?
Yeah, my dad. Yeah, it did. So let's get into the list. We're starting with 20, and I'm going to start with a nostalgic college movie for me. Okay. It's one of those movies that I watched in college. I absolutely adore this film. It's got great actors in it. It's great writing. And the story behind the movie of how it was made is one of the most impeccable, in my opinion. And it's the movie Pool Hall Junkies.
Okay, yeah.
I love this film. I love this film for multiple reasons. There's a ton of great quotes in it. There is a ton of great actors in it. Christopher Walken scene, which made me start to realize Christopher Walken does some of his best acting when he describes animals doing something, like a mouse climbing to the top of cream or a lion hunting. Yeah, a lion. I know. There's a lion here hunting. Like you're just like, fuck yes, right? And so, but the whole movie too, and I know you've seen it. You said yes, and it's one of those where it was written by two pool hustlers in a pool hall against each other, and they were telling stories all night, and they ended up becoming friends and making this movie. And it's a good film. And every time I've shown it to a woman too, I love this. At the end, they go, "It's just pool," and I'm like, "You don't get it, then. You don't get it." It's sort of like if you showed me a romantic film, I'm like, "Yeah, he just kisses her, and good for him." It's like that's the epitome of it's a guy's guy film, and that's what I love about it. I can't get enough of it. It's an impeccable film. If you've never watched it, check it out. It is a little lower budget because it didn't really get picked up by anybody except HBO, I believe. But great fucking film.
That is a great film. That is a great film, and that is your film. That is something that I knew would definitely make your list. I actually expected it a little lower, to be candid with you, but right there, I think it's a good one for you. So with that, we're going to go to my number 20. I remember being in middle school, and I remember like this movie came out, and it was the rage. This was the first time that I remember going to see a movie multiple times because my mom wanted to see it multiple times. And I enjoyed the film. I thought it was good. I didn't understand all the references in it initially. But later on, I mean, there's a whole ton of memes about it, and I really enjoy it. 1997, this film, it's a romantic adventure film, Titanic, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and whatever the other chick's name was, and Kate Winslet. And this movie was good, dude. I remember, like when this movie first came out, I was not the only one who watched this film. I remember that there was a lot of talk about this film between all of my classmates, and we lived in rural Nevada. And I'm not talking about like Pahrump. I'm talking about center of Nevada, no movie theater around, period. You have to make a trek to go and watch this film. And for everybody to have seen it back then, I still watch it when it's on today. I think it's beautifully made. I think it's a good story. It's definitely not based on a true story. But Rose definitely had room at the end. I think she killed the man. But with that, Titanic is my number 20.
I like that. And the funny thing is when you talk about the rural thing, like my story with Titanic, besides just staring at titties and bush, and made me very happy. Like when everybody would talk about it, like like even to this day, people still bring up that movie. And my wife was like, "Oh, where were you when you watched that?" Because it was the highest grossing film at all time at that time. Yeah. Pahrump Junior High took us to see that to the Pahrump Theater as a field trip.
Oh, really?
And we walked to the theater because it was close to the school. But I'll never forget when I tell people that, like, your school took you to see Titanic. I was like, it's Pahrump. They felt it was historical. So they had that as a field trip. And yeah, we all went and saw it. And then I think the teachers were like, oh, there's a nude scene. And it was like one of those things, like I think we were 7th or 8th grade. And it was like, oh, well, what are you going to do? But yeah, it was, or maybe it was 6th grade because 97, right?
It was 97 when it came out.
That's 7th grade, yeah, so for us, right? So, but great film. So I can't knock you for it. It doesn't make mine, and I mean, it's not my favorite Leonardo DiCaprio film, but it's a film that was above others for what it did. Right, it's a more than just a movie. So I agree with you there. What's your 19? We'll bounce back and forth.
My number 19, and let me double check here, is my favorite Leonardo DiCaprio film. So I have DiCaprio back to back. It actually came out in 2006. It's a crime thriller. It's also mafia. The Departed. The Departed, to me, is Leo's best film. The way that he dealt with stress and anguish and the ability to juggle the difference between right and wrong, and the feeling of wanting to be a cop and catching the criminal while also being a criminal himself. Great cast. I don't know that there's and I'd have to look, but I don't know that there's a better film with cast that's right in their prime, or at least with the talent of their prime. The fact that it includes mafia stuff like truly hits me right in the blood because I love mafia stuff. But The Departed was a great film. Jack Nicholson, Matt Damon, Marky Mark, Charlie Sheen's dad, Martin Sheen. You had Leonardo DiCaprio. It was beautifully made. Anthony Anderson was in it. Great film. If you haven't watched The Departed, please do. Reward yourself. You deserve it. Watch The Departed. It's a great film.
Impeccable film. When I go through my list tonight, it was one of those things that we talked about this on the last one where I went through phases. So I think you're going to find a lot of these are independent films and sort of in the same vein of not a lot of people have heard of them. You've heard of them most of the time with me, and they're my favorites, and a lot of people shit me. I know one person for sure is going to shit on this pick, and it's Mike from the Gray's Tap Room. But it's the movie Hard Candy.
I love that film.
There's a few reasons. I know he hates it. And I will say this, though. There's a few reasons I love it. It was one of those ones when I started really getting into film and diving into how films were made more rather than just go watching a movie. And it was one of those ones where I don't know if you noticed this in it, but like every scene's mood is every room in the house is a different color, right? Because it's an artist's house who's the molester, right? But he every scene is filmed in that color of a room to depict the mood that is happening too. So when it's somber or scary or anything, it's a blue room. When there's anger or death, it's the red room. And it's one of those things, it's those little nuances that really made me start looking for Easter eggs and enjoying films and the backstory and stuff. And I just think it's greatly acted. It's one of those two where it leaves me on the edge of my seat. I've never had a film leave me on the edge of its seat as much besides the one Uncut Gems with Adam Sandler. It doesn't make my list, but that's one of those. That movie I've never felt like so stressed out in my life and want to take a blood pressure pill. But Hard Candy is another one where it's like, how is this going to happen? How is she going to get out of it? And then how it comes to fruition and like, oh fuck, this is a little fucked up. I like it. It's a good film. I thought it was well acted. I thought it was well written, and it was different. It was different enough for me to go and seek it out. So I really enjoyed it.
The thing about Hard Candy is that it had a very strong attention to detail from the whole way that it was set up. I like how you talked about the different colors in the room because, yeah, that's something that I noticed too. I think the subject matter makes it really intense, which is why we feel like we're on the edge of our seat. Didn't make my top, but I can definitely appreciate the film. It's a good film. I enjoy that. My last one was The Departed. So my next one, and again, let me check because I have these locked in and I don't look at them until we actually go here. So this will be my number one Tarantino film. I've got Pulp Fiction at number 18. I like Pulp Fiction out of all of his movies the most. And I think the reason why is because this was the first one that I watched. Came out in 1994. The resurrection of John Travolta's career. You had a great cast in this one. Great storyline. I love how it all like wrapped into each other. It was one of the movies that I saw prior to this one was a movie called Memento, directed by Christopher Nolan. And what I found impressive about that one is that there wasn't a linear timeline in the storyline. And with Pulp Fiction, I found that same non-linear storyline was something that was really, really cool in this. But also the acting, man. I mean, I love John Travolta. I think John Travolta is a really good actor. And the way that he was in that and his chemistry with Samuel L. Jackson and then Bruce Willis and Ving Rhames. And I mean, it was great, dude. It was absolutely great. Yeah. So Pulp Fiction's my number 18.
I can see that. Mine is Fury.
Oh,
I think it's another underrated film. I don't think a lot of people really give it the credit it deserves. Shia LaBeouf is amazing in it, and Brad Pitt's amazing in it, but it has such a good cast, and it's like it's the epitome of what you hope and expect for a diversity. Like, you know, like, and what I mean by that is they all play their parts well, and they're all different people, but they're all having to live together. It's almost like Big Brother military in the smallest confined possible, but like, let's get out of this together.
Right.
Like, you can tell a lot of them don't really like each other. You could tell, but they still love each other and would fight for each other and do whatever. The scene where they're in one of the cities that gets bombed and the mother and daughter are there and he wants them to make them eggs and they're like sort of fighting at the table and yelling and one's going to go bang the girl. And like, it's one of those just gut-wrenching but amazing, you're happy, you're mad, you're sad, you're embarrassed type of scenes, and it's some of the best writing in my opinion. I think it prepared Brad Pitt for another role later that I'm going to talk about, because I think
Glorious
it came out
Bastards.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could be wrong on the order, but I believe it came out before. But it's a good film. It's a lot of fun, and it's funny because Bernthal, who's in the movie, him and Shia LaBeouf had on his podcast. Yep. They talked about it because that's where they met.
Yeah.
And it was cool to hear the story behind that. But I love that movie. I love war movies. I like a lot of military stuff. And it's one of those that it sticks with me. It's one of the movies that I usually go to for it because it's one of those overlooked. I'm not always going to go for the one that everybody will talk about. But Fury would be my next one. My one after that, I'm going to jump ahead of you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is another film that a lot of people haven't heard of, but one of my favorite actors is Aaron Eckhart.
Yeah.
I think he's impeccable. And this film is one of the most different films I've ever watched in my life. And it's with him and Helen Bonham Carter. And the movie is called Conversations with Other Women. And it's filmed in split screen. So I will say this, and I tell people this whenever I recommend this movie because I own it. I've loaned it. It used to be a date movie of mine on those Blockbuster and bus nights because I wanted to impress girls like, holy shit, you never heard of this. It's great. It's great acting, great writing. But it's filmed in split screen, and the reason is it's Aaron Eckhart and Helen Bonham Carter go back to a reunion. They were married and they get divorced, and the whole point is to show like them talking to each other and their reactions. But like when Aaron Eckhart's telling a story, Helen Bonham Carter's part of the screen turns into the story in the film, and so it's one of the most intriguing films in the sense of I like that style. I like wordy, slow, independent films. It's a lot of dialogue, but also it's so out of the box that I enjoy it. And it's also fun to see real life shit sometimes, like just watch it played out of how people react and like how bad they can be and good they can be and just living their lives. Like, you know, they were divorced. What's going to happen? And just a good film in my opinion. It makes my top list because it's one of those two. Every time I talk about it, nobody's ever fucking heard of it.
Right.
And it's one of those, I introduce it to people all the time. And they're like, they watch it and a lot of people love it or hate it. And I like things like that. I don't want everybody to go, yep, it was good or yep, it was bad. It was just, I've had people go, that sucked, or that made me sick, or it was okay. And it's just, it's a good barometer to see what people's level of the style of films they like, in my opinion.
I like that. I actually, in my next film here, I actually do have a war film, ironically. So my number 17, so the thing about this film is that I'll probably get criticized for how high up it is, but I love it. I love it because I was introduced to Andrew Garfield through Spider-Man. I didn't know much about him. I didn't know his acting range. I didn't know what he was capable of. And then later on in 2016, Hacksaw Ridge came out. And what I love about Hacksaw Ridge is just how well the character is portrayed. He plays this I don't remember if it's Army or Navy or whatever, excuse me for not knowing the details, but the soldier's name is Desmond Doss. And he is a pacifist. He doesn't necessarily believe in war, but he believes in patriotism. And he wants to go and be a medic for World War II. And the amount of just obstacles that he faces just to not hold a gun is incredible. And then the story behind as to why he doesn't want to hold a gun and the whole character arc of it, I just thought it was great, dude. It's really, really hard to say, and we'll do it someday, I'm sure. It's really, really hard to rank war films, I think. But with this one, for me personally, I love the character arc. Andrew Garfield was outstanding in this one. It had characters in it like Vince Vaughn, who really probably even shouldn't have been cast in this when you look at it on the surface. But the way that his character was done was just incredible too. His acting was great. The storyline was great. The fact that it's based off of a true story is great. Hacksaw Ridge, for that reason, is one of my favorite films, and that's why it makes my list.
That's a good flick.
So there's that. Since we're skipping each other, I'm going to skip you here real quick. My number 16 is one of my favorite fighting films ever. And when you hear this, and I think that this will probably make a lot of people's list, it's something that I love the entire story. I love how stupid it is. I love how scripted it is. But the fight scenes when they came out were tremendous. The film Rocky. I love everything about Rocky. It came out in 1976. Sylvester Stallone. The story that he wrote, it's argued about if he wrote it or came up with it or whatever, but it's his film at the end of the day. Started this incredible franchise that has gone, I think, five or six Rocky movies, another 3 Creed movies. I think there's more Creed movies coming to town here soon. But that being said, dude, I love everything about Rocky. I just thought it was a great performance by an actor who nobody knew at the time. Granted, I wasn't even around at the time. But I can watch every single Rocky movie, and Rocky will always be my favorite.
I love that he's called the Italian Stallion because he was originally in a porno.
Yeah.
And I remember I bought that porno for my brother as a joke because Rocky's his favorite film of all time. My brother loves Rocky. Like just the whole, like he has the whole set, like his jam. And I think maybe it's because it got overplayed in my house because my brother loves it so much that it was like, for me. Because my little Jake brain, when you were saying that, I thought you were going to go Bloodsport, and I'm like, oh hell yes,
dude. Bloodsport is badass, but that's not
Bloodsport's badass, but it doesn't make a top 50 film list. No. But I was surprised because I was like, oh, B-Word's going to pull a Jake here, and then you said, and then when you kept talking, I was like, oh, I know where he's going. He's going with Rocky with this because it is an amazing film. It is an amazing film. My next one is going to be on a lot of people's lists or hearts or whatever it was for the time it came out, but Top Gun. And the original Top Gun, Josh from Apple Boys, because I know he's the biggest fan of Part 2, which is just Star Wars on Earth. But Top Gun is just that film that you just can't get enough of. The soundtrack, the badassness,
the need for speed,
the quotes. It's the only film where I enjoy watching shirtless dudes like play beach, like fucking sports, and I am not ashamed of it at all.
Not at all.
I am an Iceman guy. It made me fall in love with Val Kilmer. I was always on his side over Maverick. I know everybody else was Mavman, but I love me some Iceman. I think it is a great quotable movie. I think it's almost flawless. It's almost flawless. It doesn't make my top 10, which is why, because there still are, but it's one of those I can always throw it on. Yeah. Everybody in the room's happy. I'm happy. I could watch it over and over again. I can never watch it enough. So it's one of those, it has to be there. It's a great fucking film.
It's a great film. It's a great film. I love that one. What's your next one?
My next one is Inglourious Bastards. I already preluded that it was going to go to that. That's my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie of all time. Because I like it too, that it's one of those movies, it's put into 5 parts. I believe it's 5 parts, chapters, that I can just watch single chapters and feel enough. Yeah. Because the dialogue, it chews through the screen, like how well written it is. But the milk scene is one of my favorite. The opening scene is one of my favorite scenes in a movie ever. Just how bastardly, like, and no pun intended, but the I can't remember his name right now, but the main Nazi villain is just like, fuck yes. But like I said, how you could break up each scene and just watch that scene and feel like it's a fulfilled movie in its own.
Yeah,
that's enjoyable for it. Like in the scene where they're in the bar in the basement. And it's one of those things. I talked about SLC Punk earlier, and one of the guys, Stitz, I believe, the guy who was in jail that gets out, that killed all the Germans, who was on the German side, he's in SLC Punk. And it's one of those, like, those are the only 2 movies I know him from. And when I saw him in the theater, I was so fucking pumped because it just brought me back to that day. But I think in my opinion, it's Quentin Tarantino's best work ever, because it's almost like fan fiction of what you could do to Hitler and how you would kill him.
Right.
And it's just impeccable. And Brad Pitt in it is just awesome. The Bear Jew is amazing. I can't get enough of that film.
So speaking of Brad Pitt, is that not only Brad Pitt's best movie, but is that also Brad Pitt's turning point as a modern actor? Meaning that he was no longer like the most handsome, and that's the reason why he got it, but he became a good actor? Or what would you say Brad Pitt's best role is?
I don't know if I can say his best role right now. I'd have to do that, or we'd probably have to do it for another show. It's one of my favorite roles of his, but I don't think it's his best role. And I'd really have to dig into deeper, like what I think he played the best.
Based on what his character did throughout the movie, I think that might be his best role. Like, if not that film, I'd have to look at like Interview with a Vampire, or even the Speed Train, or whatever that was called. You already put that one on your top 50.
Fight Club.
I
thought of it. Yeah. Fight Club's his best film.
Fight Club's his best film. Yeah, you're correct. So
I gotta tell you that. I mean, that was the turning point for me, where he wasn't just a handsome, he is a piece of shit.
What's funny?
Like, dickhead, but he's still.
I have Fight Club on my list, and I didn't even look, but it's not in this episode, so we're just going to go from there. Okay. But I will really show you right now, in case you don't believe me, that Fight Club is on the list. Yeah. So, since we're recording a back-to-back here. So, my next one, number 15, because you just finished number 15, correct?
Right.
My next one, number 15, came out in 1975. It's an American adventure thriller film. Some people can call it a horror. Some people can actually call it a creature feature, which is what I think you would call it. Jaws. Jaws is one of the most perfect films that has ever been shot. And when you look at how it was filmed in that day, the way that the characters interact with each other, the way that the scenes transition from scene to scene, the suspense that you have from the shark, the way that everybody reacts to the shark, it's a phenomenal film. It is a phenomenal film. This one at number 15 was so very close to being in my top 10. I'm not even kidding you. As we go farther in this list, I think you'll agree it was so much harder to try to narrow down the difference between 15 and 10. And that's where this one ended, was number 15 for me. So if you're okay with it, I'll go ahead and skip you again. And,
go ahead.
And I'm going to give you my number 14. My number 14, oh man, how I love this movie. My number 14, I believe, was a Stephen King novel, and I'm actually going to look that up right now. Stephen King novel came out in 1996. The movie came out in 1999, which is actually pretty fascinating considering a 3-year turnaround for a film. Especially when you look at the green light process, you look at the casting, you look at the script writing, all of that sort of stuff. My number 14 is The Green Mile.
Oh, really?
You look at Tom Hanks, you look at Michael Clark Duncan, even the pedophile actor, I don't remember his name, but he likes to marry like 16-year-olds or whatever. Everybody in that film was absolutely incredible. I love the storyline. I had no clue where it was going to go when I started watching it, to be candid. And then come to find out, you end up with this massive story about a guy named John Coffey, like the drink, just not spelled the same. And he's in jail for the rape of this little girl that he didn't rape. And then he ultimately becomes, if I'm spoiling this for somebody, I'm sorry, but he ultimately becomes exonerated. But there's so many more plot points to this story that I think is just incredible. So The Green Mile makes my list at number 14.
I like that. It's a good movie. I think it's one of those, I haven't rewatched it so much. I watched it, I think 2 or 3 times my whole life. And so it's like, It doesn't make it that high. And it's a theory of 2 for me. I know they're not even similar, but for me, it's one of those just Shawshank Redemption and that are like the 2 films that I put in a parallel.
Yeah. Because they're both in a
one
prison.
or the other. Right.
Yeah.
My next one is Midsummer. Florence Pugh, first introduced to her, really fucked up film. I love what A24 does. I like that they take risks. I like that it's fucking weird. I like that it makes you feel uncomfortable. I like that you have no idea where it's going. I enjoy the fuckery of it all. I love that movie. It's one of those I can watch over and over. I love to put it on and make everybody feel terrible in the room. But it's one of, and when my wife watched it, she was like, I'm never watching that again. And I've watched it multiple times with it. And it's one of my favorite A24 films. It's one of those ones where it's like, I wish I knew the director. I can't remember who it is right now, but it's one of those, I just like the movie. I like the movie. I like how twisted it is and demented and weird. And it started that track where it was like, that came out, Hereditary, The Witch and all that. And I'm like, this fucking studio is like my type of studio. And so it made number 14. I was surprised how high it was when I was ranking this, but it was one of those, like, when I first started doing this list, I was like, oh, it's going to be higher. It's going to be lower. It's going to be lower. And then finally, when I was writing it out, I'm like, no, I rewatched this movie more than other ones. So I put it there. I'm proud of it.
I've watched the movie. Definitely doesn't rank that high on my list. You are a massive fan of A24 though. And I could understand that for you. On the other hand, A24 is okay. To me, I appreciate what they do, but it's just not my flavor of ice cream. So I'm going to go with that. What's your number 13?
Tombstone. I think Tombstone, we've talked about it.
You have already changed your fucking list because when I put Tombstone on the list, you said, God damn it, you metaphorically threw the pen.
That's why it's on here.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
And here's the thing. This one I actually circled. I circled it because I was like, I'm right. Because when I say it, B-Word's going to be so mad going, no, we've already had episodes come out. And I'll tell you right now, there's scribbles all over this fucking thing. There's scribbles everywhere. My wife had to come to the office and tell me to knock it off. The one thing I will be proud of, though, B-Word, there's no scribbles in the top 10. The top 10 has been the same the whole time because I started writing the low ones and I segmented it. And I did the top 10. Actually, I did like 50 through like 35. And then I did my top 10 going, I know these aren't going to move and I need them on my list. But I moved shit around. I've cheated. I can't help myself. I had a hard time because I kept writing things going, nope, that's got to miss. That got to. And then when you came out with that on the episode, I was so mad at myself. I was so mad at myself that I went back and redacted that and put it on there. So yes, it's on my list. I circled it just to have this conversation. But Tombstone is almost, it's the best Western. It's so much fun. Yeah. I enjoy it. I can't help myself. And I also talk about how much I love Westerns, and I was sitting there going, I don't really have shit on here for it. So fuck me. Yeah, I cheated. I put it on here. I don't care.
All right, fine. So that was your number 13, correct? So my number 13 came out in 1990. Directed by Martin Scorsese. It is a mafia film, Goodfellas. I love Goodfellas. I love everything about Goodfellas. From the chemistry between Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, to the prison scenes where some things in here are false. It just has to be false. But the fact that they include mobsters of that day and time, the fact that it's somewhat based on a true story, one of the longest films that I had watched when I first watched it. I think it comes out at like almost 2.5 hours, something like that. That's before that was popular to have films at 2.5 hours. I don't know if this was my first introduction to Scorsese, but goddamn, he did a good job. And I love Goodfellas, love everything about it. My number 13.
It's my second favorite Scorsese film. Didn't make my list. And there's a reason behind it. That's a fucking impeccable film. I didn't watch it until I started dating my wife. I never saw it, and everybody gave me shit. It was almost on that list, like The Godfather, like, wow, you know, whatever. Everybody would quote it and talk about it. And then my wife made me watch it, and that actually started our movie nights. What happened was, and we've talked about on this show, my wife and my movie nights, is I said, oh, like pick out a film you love. And she's like, oh, I'm going to pick Goodfellas, but you've seen it. I told her I didn't. And she was like so shocked and angry. And I said, what is this, like an Italian, like birthright? Like you have, and she goes, yeah, it is. It actually fucking is. Like of a certain generation, like The Godfather used to be. This is the new age one. And she made me watch this film, and I was so happy I did. And it's a fucking impeccable film. So good pick on that. My number 12, American Psycho.
That's a great film. That's not on my top 50, but that's a great film.
It's one of those, it was hard for me to put it on here, and I was having a hard place putting it where, but I realized I rewatch it more than other movies. And I've learned to respect it way more the older I get. And the other reason was, I'll never forget, my parents rented it because it came out in 2000. And they hated it. And I was like, why do they hate this film so much? And I remember when I went to college, I finally rented. I didn't get to watch it when it first came out. I watched it. I was like, yeah, it's pretty decent. It's weird. And then I was like, I rewatched it, and I watched it again, and I watched it again, and I watched it again going, what is happening here? Like, is it real? Is it not? And I just love the intrigue. I love how vapid his fucking character is. Yeah. I like how, like, you could tell he was really into the method acting in it. It's my favorite. I'll take that back. It's my favorite realistic acting of Christian Bale. Like, I think there's somebody else. There's, you know, I will talk about that later.
It's fine. We know what that
The
is.
Dark Knight is probably his greatest film ever.
Yep.
But it's my favorite of him acting outside of a character that's already beyond itself, if that makes sense. Yeah. So American Psycho is my number 12.
So my number 12 is my favorite Marvel film. Okay. So, but it's not my favorite comic book film. So let's go with that. So Mike at Gray's Tap Room, DC has won. So we're just going to say that. However, 2018, I remember talking with you. You went to the theater. We always used to talk about Marvel films before Marvel's kind of tapered off. You had a chance to go see this film before I did. I was at work, and you went and saw it during the day, like I think you and Ben would normally go during the day.
Yeah.
Avengers Infinity War is by far my favorite Marvel film ever. In a previous episode, my number 22 was Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. And this one was The Empire Strikes Back of our generation. Avengers Infinity War, the character arcs and bringing characters to the screen that had never interacted before to fight against Thanos and his army was so incomprehensible for me at the time, to see the Guardians of the Galaxy mixed with Tony Stark, mixed with a blip, mixed with, Spider-Man, and just Wakanda Forever and everything, dude. Like, it was so massive for what it was. And I appreciate Endgame. I really do. But like you, I love it when the villain wins. And I remember at the end of the snap, we sat there, and we weren't in the same theater, but I know our experience was the same. We sat there and we went, what the fuck did we just watch? And we, as you said before in our previous episode, we went through theory after theory, Easter egg after Easter egg to try to figure out what Endgame was going to be, not only in title, but also in storyline. It's an amazing film on how to get it there. I think there was 23 films in the Infinity Saga. This would have been movie number 21 or 22. This was amazing. Avengers Infinity War, my favorite Marvel film by far.
I agree with you. I mean, I already had it way lower on my list. I do love that it's both of our favorite Marvel film ever. And that when we did that's a little hard to break down between them. And yes, Mike, DC did win, but fuck Superman. And it's funny. I'm gonna give you my 11. I'm gonna close out my part of this episode. And I realize that I have 3, or I have this movie here, and I think it's going to surprise you and everybody else how low it is, but it's Donnie Darko.
Really?
Because I love Donnie Darko. You know that.
I do.
And it's one of my favorite films of all time. I do have this argument, though. I like the director's cut more than the original film. And it's one of those rare ones where back in the day, a director's cut, they just added a few things. The
Yeah.
director's cut on this was so vastly different in the sense of how it went about. But I think it's because I've appreciated this film less over the years. And it might have been because they try to make sequels and there's certain things that don't hold up and it's not flawless. And there are parts that I can like skip through. And so I don't rewatch it like I used to. I loved it when it first came out. It was viral marketing. I remember to get on the website, you had to to get further into the website, you actually had to know stuff like where they lived on their street by looking at an ID close and finding Easter eggs and stuff. But and I have the numbers tattooed on my arm. I love the bunny. I love the fucking movie. I love the fucking movie to death. But there are 10 films in the world that I find better. And that was hard for me because, as everybody knows, Donnie Darko used to be the one I'd always touted. But getting older, I think it was more, I liked the weirdness of it and the bunny more than the movie itself. I think it's Jake Gyllenhaal's greatest acting, in my opinion. I love that him and his sister are in it. But there's holes I can poke in the movie. And the other reason it drops a little bit, it's about time travel. And my wife always laughs going, I don't know how you like this movie when it's all about wormholes and time travel and all that. And it's one of those, I don't actually think it makes sense. And I know the director doesn't fucking care. And I think that bothers me. But it's still impeccable fucking movie.
Great film. It's a great film, dude. Like, there's nothing wrong with that film whatsoever. I'm just trying to verify. This is my top Scorsese movie. Now, what I will tell you is going through my movies here, you can kind of tell a vein like of where I was going with this. This was the impeccable directors, basically. And the film for me was Casino. Casino, I think, is Scorsese's best film. Came out in 95. Again, the cast, holy shit, dude. The cast for this, again, fantastic. De Niro, Pesci, Sharon Stone. You had a wonderful story about Las Vegas, classic mafia Las Vegas. You and I grew up in the area. It's something that we cannot get away from in our own experience because we heard these stories firsthand. And when I say firsthand, it was from people who lived in the area or even from people who experienced these things. For me, man, that the mafia films go right in my vein. And this one for Casino is one of the top films, in my opinion, almost ever. So that makes my number 11 on this list for good reason. And I think it's one of those ones that some people argue it's a little too long. I think it's perfect.
I'm in that argument, in fact. Yeah, I think it's a little too long, but yes.
But I think it's perfect. I think that the progression of the characters, specifically Sharon Stone, was outstanding. Again, Pesci, my God, man, you want to talk greatest actors of all time? Pesci at some point has to be on a top 20 list, if not top 10. Who would have thought that he would have been this good? So Casino's my number 11, dude, and that's gonna close out our stuff here. But yeah, I'm excited to actually finish this list up. Me too. Get into the top 10. I'm thrilled that we're going to get to this point that we just don't know what's going to be on there. I know that both of us have flashed our list. Haven't had a chance to read your list, but I'm excited to get into the next one. So although we're recording these back to back, next one will be out in December. So for everybody following along, thank you so much. And Jake, what do you got for me?
Thanks for all the dirty talk and come back and get sanitized. This is Jake from the Bleach Bros podcast, and thank you for listening to today's episode. I want to bring to your attention our Linktree. Visit Linktree/Bleach Bros podcast for access to all of our socials, merch, and streaming sites. Linktree is linktr.ee/Bleach Bros podcast, all one word. And if you enjoy our content, make sure to give us a like, give us a review on whatever platform you are listening on, and also invite your friends.